It's 2015, and America's western coast is in the grip of a severe drought that's being felt far and wide. Over in Marion County, Oregon, for example, Detroit Lake is the lowest that it has ever been. And yet, as the reservoir slowly dries up, the waters recede to reveal a stunning sight. Rising from the lake are the relics of an old railroad town, one that's been hidden from sight for over 60 years. Before we start our story, smash the like button. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. The historic drought that has plagued the West for more than 4 years now recently uncovered a surprise in northern Oregon. Under Detroit Lake, which had record low water levels in 2015, the abandoned town of Old Detroit has reemerged. In October, Marion County Sheriff's Deputy Dave Zahn was driving along the reservoir when he discovered a wagon made in the 1870s partially sunk in the mud. At the time, Detroit Lake was 143 feet below capacity. The low oxygen levels at the bottom of the lake kept the wagon in pristine condition. U.S. Forest Service archaeologist Kara Kelly told the Statesman Journal that the wagon was probably damaged more in the weeks that it has been on land than in the decades it has lurked underwater. Located in the famously picturesque area of America known as the Pacific Northwest, Oregon is renowned for its magnificent landscapes. From the state's golden sandy beaches to the lush green expanses of its parks, this is a place that delights millions of visitors every year. Now, one of Western Oregon's most popular attractions is Detroit Lake, a reservoir on the North Santiam River that lies near to the small city of Detroit in Marion County. At 9 miles long, Detroit Lake boasts some 32 miles of shoreline. The water there also provides local residents with plenty of opportunities for fishing, swimming, boating, and other recreational activities. On top of this, Detroit Lake supplies water to neighboring communities, such as the city of Salem, which sits some 46 miles to the northwest. This state of affairs hasn't always been the case, though. In fact, the body of water was only created in 1953 when a dam was built to control flooding in the nearby Willamette River. Interp News 7. At just 1,426 feet, the water was at its lowest point ever. Such a drastic drop had only been recorded once before, in January 1969. And even though the lake's water level had previously fallen to 1,427 feet 3 further times, this record drop revealed something that the reservoir had kept hidden for generations. Yes, in the fall of 2015, a startling sight confronted local residents. There, exposed on the lakebed, were the remains of Old Detroit, a remnant of times long since past. After all, the town had been abandoned and swallowed up when the North Santiam River was dammed back in 1953. Founded in 1880, Old Detroit started life as a camp meant to house men working on the Oregon Pacific Railroad. This ambitious venture, the brainchild of local businessman Thomas Eggenden Hogg, was originally intended to connect the state with the east of the country. Ultimately, though, it never quite reached its potential. Beginning in the city of Salem, some 50 miles east of Old Detroit, the railroad once followed the path of the mighty North Santiam River. Then, after the track traversed the canyon floor, it reached the foothills of the Cascade Range of mountains. Hogg even planned to continue through the Cascades and onward towards the Transcontinental Railroad. Sadly, though, Hogg ran out of cash before he could make his dream a reality. Instead, he bought a steamship and used this to connect his railroad with the city of San Francisco. And while the businessman made a number of attempts to realize his vision, he eventually had to admit defeat. As a result, the Oregon Pacific Railroad petered out at Idonha, some 15 miles away from the Cascades. This meant the nearby turntable at Old Detroit became one of the last stops on the line. Yet despite the remoteness of the station, it was often busy with loggers transporting timber eastwards by rail. At one point, Old Detroit was a thriving community that played host to a number of cafes along with a cinema, a church, a hardware store, and a school. However, for farmers living further down the valley, life was often a struggle. The North Santiam River passed through the nearby Cascade Mountains, swelling with rainfall and snowmelt as it went. Eventually, it would come crashing through the nearby towns, wreaking havoc along the way. For farmers and boosters in the Willamette Valley, the North Santiam made life hell, Oregon historian Bob Reinhart told the Statesman Journal in 2015. Gathering snowmelt and rainfall in the Cascades, the river contributed to floods that washed through Salem and other valley towns, sometimes causing millions of dollars in damage. However, in 1938, Congress passed the Flood Control Act, which permitted the use of civil engineering programs to help combat damaging deluges in the United States. And in the Willamette Valley itself, developers came up with a plan. By constructing 2 dams, they realized they could solve the area's flooding problem and produce electricity at the same time. Like Hogg before them, the masterminds behind the Detroit Dam thought big. Upon its completion, the dam would stretch 1,580 feet from end to end and tower 360 feet tall. It was also envisioned that the great structure would be able to contain 455,000 acre-feet of water from the North Santiam River when it finally went into operation. Unfortunately, there was one small problem with these grand plans for a new dam. Apparently, the barrier would require 3,580 acres of space, including the use of the land where Old Detroit stood. And so, in the name of progress, the railroad town's residents prepared to leave their homes behind for good. There, on a hill above the old town, residents re-established the community of Detroit, even keeping the same name. Some families went so far as to dismantle their dwellings piece by piece, dragging them by sled to the new site. And even today, the streets contain some buildings that were relocated in this strange manner. These structures almost certainly wouldn't have survived if they'd stayed in place. You see, in 1953, the dam, the 5th largest of its kind in the country, went into operation. As a result, the river became a lake that would quickly swallow the rooftops of Old Detroit. And yet on days when the waters would quickly swallow the rooftops of Old Detroit, and yet on days when the waters are at their lowest, the curious can still sometimes see the ruins that remain are at their lowest. The curious can still sometimes see the ruins that remain. In fact, in October 2015, the few people lucky enough to catch a glimpse of Old Detroit were in. In fact, in October 2015, the few people lucky enough to catch a glimpse of Old Detroit were in for a particularly spectacular sight. And the remnants of the former town definitely weren't the only relics to be particularly spectacular sight. And the remnants of the former town definitely weren't the only relics to be exposed as the water waned. There was also a 19th exposed as the water waned. There was also a 19th century wagon that, thanks to the low oxygen levels in Century Wagon, that thanks to the low oxygen levels in the lake, was incredibly well preserved. Arved. I went on a treasure hunt down along the river, figuring I'd find foundations or something like that. Dave. I went on a treasure hunt down along the river, figuring I'd find foundations or something like that. Dave Zane, a Marion County Sheriff's deputy, told the Zon, a Marion County Sheriff's deputy, told the Statesman Journal in 2015. Then I saw a piece of old in 2015. Then I saw a piece of old history right there. The wagon, which history right there. The wagon, which dates back over 140 years, was most likely used to carry goods, and it dates back over 140 years, was most likely used to carry goods, and it had emerged from the lake bed lying on its side. Had emerged from the lake bed lying on its side. Furthermore, a plaque on the vehicle declares that it was produced by the Milburn Wagon Company in 1875. Furthermore, a plaque on the vehicle declares that it was produced by the Milburn Wagon Company in 1875. Based in Toledo, Ohio, the company was the biggest manufacturer of wagons on the planet at the time. And Ohio, the company was the biggest manufacturer of wagons on the planet at the time. And according to Kara Kelly, an archaeologist with the U.S. Forest Service, this particular example may have played a part in the construction of the local railroad, at least before it was left to its watery fate. Before it was left to its watery fate. Every winter, when the spillways of the Detroit Dam are opened to make room for spring snowmelt, every winter, when the spillways of the Detroit Dam are opened to make room for spring snowmelt, parts of the old town become visible above the water. but there is no record of the wagon ever being. Parts of the old town become visible above the water, but there is no record of the wagon ever being discovered before, and the water levels haven't been as low as they were in October 2015 since 1969. It could be decades before Detroit Lake's water levels fall that low again, which is exactly how Zahn and the Forest Service would like it.